Hello, everybody. I'm very excited today because I have a very amazing guest for you. He's commonly known as the brand doctor. He runs the brand doctor podcast. His name is Henry Kaminski Jr.
You got
And
it.
yes, and one thing that I have in common with this guest is we both very passionate about branding. I'm crazy about branding. He's also crazy about branding. And I believe it's still morning in New York. Good morning, Henry, and I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate being on the show.
Definitely, thank you. And most people don't understand what branding is. Can you give me a definition, your own definition of what branding is?
Absolutely. So, branding is that gut feeling you get when you interact with either a person or a product or service or another business. So it's branding is all about feeling. It's that desired perception that you want somebody else to get after interacting with you.
Definitely, that's a very spot on definition, and I like that. And as you know, that I'm in South Africa. I'm from Africa, and in particular South Africa. Most people actually have this idea of humility, thinking that humility is this thing where when you're supposed to be a ghost. You're supposed to be a no-name brand without people not knowing who you are and what you're all about. What do you think about? Do you think that branding is for everybody? Is it for people that are not running businesses? Is it for people that are also running businesses? What's your opinion on that?
I think whether we like it or not, we are branding ourselves every single day just by living and breathing. I mean, the way you communicate to another individual, the way you communicate with another business, the way you present yourself, the clothes that you wear, the food that you like, the music that you like. This is all part of your branding. See, each and every one of us are a brand. We're a personal brand. And one of the things that I see a lot of people messing up is that they're not staying true to self. And when you're not staying true to self, you can't stay true to brand. And there's where the disconnect is. And at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to the fear of being judged, the fear of being made fun of, the fear of all these different things. But we have to understand that, that is doing not only yourself a disservice, but it's doing your audience a disservice too, or the people you hang around with a disservice as well, because people want to feel connected with confidence. They want to feel connected to safety. And think about it. I'm going to ask you and your audience a question. What drives you to certain individuals? What drives you to certain brands? It's the confidence that they project, and it's that feeling that they give you that makes you feel empowered or makes you feel like they're leveling up your status in your life. And when I mean status, I don't mean, the watch or the clothes or the cars. I think what's going to make tomorrow easier. And I think that is a big, big thing that people need to pay attention to is embrace your brand, embrace what you love, embrace what you hate, and don't worry about what other people think so much.
That's very profound. And you spoke about staying true to yourself, which speaks to the core of what you really stand for, what you really stand. Let me ask you a very personal question. What do you stand for, Henry?
Impact. Impact and trying to make this world a better place. When you can make this world a better place, if you can empower somebody and lift them up, make them better, give them some thinking that they probably never thought about before, and just make them feel better about themselves, they're going to do way better inside of their business and brand And so I just want to level people up.
That's very true, and your impact has definitely reached South Africa, and I'm a product of that. From your weekly podcast, I was just having a conversation with you before when I was telling you that it's my weekly ritual, and I make sure that I get to listen to your podcast. And how do you get so much attention? How do you manage to get attention?
That's a great point. So there's two ways that I manage to attract an audience, and one is being very consistent with my presence. Think about it, Tyrone. If you listen to one of my podcasts and you liked it, and then you were excited to hear about the next one, or listen to the next one, and it didn't come out for 3 weeks, and then you got a taste of the second one, you really like that one, and that one came out the next day, and then you got that, and then you had to wait. See that inconsistency? That would be so frustrating to you. You would be like, I'm out of here. I need consistency in my life. I need certainty in my life for me to actually connect with something. So consistency, getting out there and embracing my beliefs, my values, right? Not being wishy-washy and standing for something, drawing that line dead in the sand, saying, this is what I love, this is what I hate, and not being afraid to communicate that. That's one. Number two, it's, I just had it off the top of my head. Being very creative with it. So, excuse me, I had to drink a little water here. Being creative with it. So a lot of people are just mimicking their competition or mimicking other people. And what happens when you do that is you just become another Me Too brand. So what differentiates you from someone else? So I like to change things up a little bit, like on my podcasts. I try to go for the jugular inside of my podcast, where I ask my guests when I do have them on the show, what's that one thing that bothers you so much about your industry, and what are you so passionate about tackling to overcome this or to defeat this pet peeve of yours, right? That brings out a lot of emotion in people. And that's why those guest podcasts go like 45 minutes, because they just keep talking, because they're very passionate about what it is that they love to do. And so putting that sort of spin on things, hitting them from different angles, right? There's a concept called omnipresence, and the concept of omnipresence means the feeling you give to someone that makes you feel like you're everywhere. So, if you go to my Instagram, if you go to Facebook, if you go to LinkedIn, if you go to YouTube, if you go to iTunes, like, you will find me. And so when you spread your presence out across many different platforms, that will allow you to attract an audience. And the last thing that I don't want to forget is really understanding my audience and what their needs, wants, and desires are, and talking to that every single day. And what that does is that creates relevancy. It creates a connection. I had a podcast guest on Saturday, and we were talking about, and he's in the comic book industry. And I said, and he's an awesome storyteller. And I said, what is the biggest thing about storytelling that will make or break a comic, or make or break a connection with your audience? And he said, the relationship the audience has with the character. If they can't see themselves inside the character, there's a disconnect. And so relevancy is super important. People will be drawn to you for years and years to come if they can connect with you on some relevant way.
And this is very true. I always talk about it's more important to be relevant than to be famous, because most people seek out to be famous and as opposed to be relevant. There are many people that are famous but not relevant. And a perfect example is when you look at, I don't know if you know Soulja Boy, the rapper.
Of course.
He's very famous, but at the moment he's rather irrelevant as compared to the people that are relevant at the moment, which is something that most people don't focus on. And the next question that I have to ask you is, I always get this a lot where people come out and communicate to their audience or to the world that I'm the world's number one sales expert. I'm the world's number one, at marketing expert. And many of the times, these people are not actually the world's number one, and they're coming out and communicating that they're the world's number one. And the question that I always have is, what makes you global? What makes you that? What makes you to be that type of person that you say you are? And many people fail to answer me. In your own opinion, do you believe in faking it till you make it?
No, I don't. And I've lived that. I lived that for a while, and I understand why it. And here's why it doesn't work. Eventually, the truth catches up to you.
Definitely.
Okay. And so you can't fake it till you make it, because eventually the truth will shine and you will be revealed. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do is I don't like to claim myself as a branding expert. I don't like to claim myself as the number one of anything, because I know I'm not. Okay. Mm-hmm. One thing that I am, though, is very passionate about people. I'm very passionate about branding. I'm very passionate about design. I'm very passionate about taking people from this level here and bringing them up a couple notches, to a more enhanced look and feel, or an enhanced way of living, right? But that's what I believe, that if you invest in yourself, great things will happen. I just happen to be somebody who is very passionate about branding and stays very consistent with understanding and learning about branding. And that's what people are attracted to. So understanding that people will buy why, and this comes from Simon Sinek, I didn't make this up, but people will buy your why before they buy your what or your how. And so I go out there every day before I go live and I say to myself, is what I'm about to say in line with my values? Will this help someone that is listening enhance their brand identity, their presence, their messaging? And that's how I position myself. So I wouldn't recommend you fake it till you make it. I would recommend that you stay very consistent and narrow with whatever it is that you love to do. So the biggest problem, Tyrone, is people are trying to be everything to everyone, and it dilutes your subject matter expertise. So what I would recommend is you stay extremely narrow with what it is that you're really, really good at, and just be a forever student. So consistently learn new things about the industry and apply them and say, how can I help my audience do this? So if there's one thing that I would want your audience to take away from this call or this live or this podcast, whatever you decide to do with it, is focus and ask yourself, who do I truly want to serve? And then learn everything you possibly can about that individual, and then go in and start creating products or services that will help them.
Wow. This is amazing. Now, just to add on to what you just said, and I also believe that it's always better when people say it. If people say that you're the world's best, that is opposed to you coming out and saying that I'm the best at this. And you spoke about having a narrow focus briefly. Have you ever heard the statement, jack of all trades and master of none? It's something which is very common, I find, with people, where they try like a broad approach on their branding, and they try to focus on doing this and this and this and this and this and this and that. Can you just go deeper on in terms of narrowing down your focus and how people can just focus on that one thing and they can be known for that one thing? As I'll give an example with you. if you're to think about branding, it's your thing. It's that one thing that we can talk about. Design, everything, we can talk about that. So can you just help me narrow that down?
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking me how to narrow that focus down?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things is, if you want to get tactical, we can get tactical. One of the things that I do with my clients is I create a client brief. And basically I do a lot of front end discovery with that client. So when I'm helping a client build a brand, I go through 7, sometimes 10 hours of discovery calls with them, similar to this, very virtual. It's either through Skype or Blue Jeans, they're recorded. And I am trying to learn and immerse myself into their brand to find out what it is that they're truly passionate about and find that ideal customer persona. And what I typically do with all my clients is there's typically 3 different types of clients that people like to interact with. And so what I do with me and the client actually define who their end users are, okay? And that gets really, really specific and really, really narrow. And now we actually put names to them. Like I'm working with a client right now who's an executive coach, who's a business coach, and we realized that he has 3 different types of client. He has Tiny Tim, he's got Mr. Ego Man, and he's got Lazy Susan, and they all have different demographics. They all have different stories and backgrounds. They all have different goals, all different needs, different solutions, and we have different solutions for each one of them. And so identifying who that is and really talking specifically to them, everything becomes easier. See, when you try to talk to thousands of people, it's very hard to narrow your messaging. But when you can talk to one person, it makes your messaging very, very simple. Why? Because now I know what Tiny Tim needs in his life, and I know the exact solution that I need to provide him. And the same thing goes for the other 2 types, user types or user personas. So that's how you narrow down who it is that you want to serve. And so it all comes down to you, Tyrone. Like, you're in charge of your brand. You're in charge of it. And so you can enjoy working with certain people, or you can absolutely hate working with certain people. So it really comes down to you. And that's the greatest thing about branding, is you have 100% control over it on your end, where you could say, listen, I don't want to help those types of people. I want to help this type of person. And then you just go all in. And I can hear it now because I've gotten it a lot, and I've struggled with it too myself. You say to yourself, well, I might be missing out. The FOMO sets in, right? The fear of missing out sets in. Well, if I focus in on just Tiny Tims, what about Johnny and Sally and Bob, or small businesses? Well, you just said to me that you really love working with Tiny Tims. So what are you worried about missing out? Like, there's plenty of Tiny Tims in the world that you can serve. So it's that limited belief, it's that fear of missing out that you just need to eliminate, because it's going to dilute your messaging and really make it hard for you to market your business and brand in the future.
Wow, man, this is amazing. A lot of people say that your brand is not just your logo, which is true. When you look at Steve Jobs, for instance, when you look at everything that he did with Apple, he put a lot of focus, the same amount of focus on the design aspect of the product as much as the same amount of time he put on the chips that were inside. And I believe that, do you believe that design can also evoke some sort of emotional reaction towards a brand?
Absolutely. There's a study out there that says 80% of buying decision actually comes from the color of the
Wow.
of the product or service that you're delivering, or the color of the brand. And so when you focus on color, understanding the way you design a color identity for a brand isn't, oh, I like the color purple, so I'm going with purple today. It's what does that color purple represent? And you could just Google color psychology and you'll find dozens of charts and examples, and right. So what you need to understand is looking at what certain colors represent and the value that's subliminally behind them, and asking yourself, now, does that color or align with my audience's values? Because subconsciously, purple, I roll with purple. I love purple personally, but I also picked it because I'm creative and it represents creativity. It represents royalty. I like the finer things in life, not calling myself royalty, but it represents royalty. And the clients that I serve are typically an existing business that has a business that's doing decent, but not as good as they want it to be, and they want to level up. They want to get to royal status, and so that color purple aligns with their values subconsciously, and that's why I chose purple for my brand. So there are a ton of design elements. Imagery evokes emotion, and imagery is a huge part of design. It's a huge part of brand, right? If you're an urban, type of brand that's coming out of New York City, you're probably going to go with a lot of brick, a lot of hardscape, a lot of, very tight corners. Whereas maybe you're a Midwest brand and you work with farmers, right? Your imagery is going to be a lot different than an urban brand. So I'm just giving you two extreme examples, but there are many different facets and pillars of branding that you need to understand. And I'll give you pretty much the 7 that you should really pay attention to. One is your logo, because that is sort of the face of the brand. One is the imagery. One is the design. One is the color. One is the fonts and typography. One is the voice. And one is the positioning. Like, you really need to know how to position your brand properly so that the message connects. And so those are the pillars of branding that you need to pay attention to, because it's not just your logo. You're right.
Wow. And you spoke about color motivating people to buy. Why do customers, can you tell me some of the reasons why customers buy the brands they buy?
Because they have an emotional connection to it. And that, see, 90% of what we buy is with the heart, not the brain. Your brain is the logical part. Your heart is the emotional part. So 90% of buying decision comes from emotion. We don't buy a Range Rover because it's because it's a car. I mean, a Toyota has 4 wheels. A Range Rover has 4 wheels. What does a Range Rover do for people? It makes them feel like important. It makes them feel like a level of success. I have a Range Rover, and I actually wrote an email about it this morning. And the reason why I bought my Range Rover, because it's a status symbol, and it makes me feel like I've accomplished something with myself and with my business. Because if my business wasn't doing good, I wouldn't be able to afford a Range Rover. So, every time I get into that truck, I say it makes me feel proud. It makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel, and I'm not afraid to ask, and all of those things may sound so silly to people, but that's how it makes me feel. I really don't care. You know what I'm saying? And so people need, and I embrace it. And my wife, she makes fun of me all the time because she likes her nice things, but she lives a very simplistic life. She's like, you're the woman in this relationship. You know that, right? and I tell her, and I embrace it. And now it's become a joke, and it's just something that I embrace. And but that's what it comes down to, you know. I hope that answered your question. I don't like to ramble.
It did. I think last question, hopefully.
We're done already? I could go another hour.
Let's go for it. What advice would you give somebody who's starting? Let's say somebody's starting out to build the brand. How would they start? What's the first step? Yeah.
So ask yourself a couple of questions. One is, why am I starting this business in the first place? You got to get really clear with that, and you got to get really true with yourself with that. If it's to get rich, I would invite you to reevaluate your thinking and your why and your purpose, right? So identify your why, identify your purpose. The next thing you need to find out is, who do you truly want to serve? Okay. And when you're discovering your why and your purpose, that may come out right away, which will kill two birds with one stone, they call it, right? Then after that, you need the experience. And what I would strongly recommend you do is get your product or service in the hands of as many people as you possibly can. And if that means you got to get out there and sort of do some stuff for free, then go ahead and do it. Why? Because that will give you the experience, the confidence, the wisdom, the understanding to know where your strengths, where your weaknesses are, so that you can correct them. It'll also give you the leverage to create case studies and testimonials to then focus that into paid customers. And so you'll market the experience, you'll market those case studies and the results that you've given those people that you've worked with. Now, those people that are watching, they don't know that you did it for free. You don't have to tell anybody that. Who cares, right? But the point is you're starting to now show and prove. And we used to throw around, and I still throw around that phrase to this day, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to showing and proving that you're a subject matter expert, but you're not calling yourself that. People are calling you that. There's a difference. When the market calls you an expert, that's one thing. But if you're calling yourself an expert and you're really not, that's where your brand crumbles. So that's basically the best advice I can give to somebody who's just starting out. Yes, I know you're going to cringe when you hear me say, get out there and start working for free for people. But honest to God, you got to get your feet wet somehow. And that's how you do it. But let me not forget this as well. Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. And what you need to do is, I wouldn't get so focused and so consumed with trying to look at what the competitor next door is doing. I would pay some mind to it. But what I would do is I would look at the master that is dominating that industry, your industry, and model what they're doing. That's going to give you a different, that's going to give you a like 14-step advantage to the competitor next door, because the competitor next door is just doing a little better than you at this point, you know. So if you want to be great, you got to model the great. The next door competitor, in my opinion, is just good. So that will give you the framework. That'll give you, because they're obviously achieving that amount of success for a reason. So what you need to do is you need to look deep into what they're doing and how they're doing it and why they're doing it, and model it, but make it your own. Customize it to you. Put your spin on it. Make it unique. And that's what's going to make you come out of the gate flying.
Wow. And that's really amazing. I just finished writing my second book, which talks about the idea of building a brand before you start thinking about making money or sales. So building a brand so that you focus on making a difference, focus on making meaning, as opposed to just making money. Do you believe that brands must be better from the inside out, or must begin internally? Everything must begin internally before we take it out.
Yeah, for sure. I think it all starts from the inside. I think really defining your purpose is really going to help the brand grow and evolve organically and really build that solid foundation. When you know your purpose, when you know your why, and you're really clear with that, and you're not going to deviate from it just because somebody else maybe made fun of it one day, right? Because that's what happens. People will get trolled on the internet, and they will get so upset about it that they'll shut their doors. And it's so crazy, but it sounds so extreme, but that's what people do. And then the doubt sets in, and then next thing you know, they're out of business. And so really focusing in on building your confidence, investing in yourself, investing in your brand, defining your purpose and your why. Start from the inside, and then the outside will sort of grow itself. And so it's great that you asked some really great questions, my friend. Dude.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm learning from you.
Well, it's one thing I heard recently. I was listening to a podcast. I forget where it was though, but the power, the true power in brand is in the questions, not the answers. Because when you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. And I can share with you, I share this story a lot, but when I was growing up, I struggled with this a lot because every time I would ask my dad a question in my teenage years, right, and he didn't feel like answering it, he would say, "What are you writing, a book?" And he would dismiss my question, and that really messed with me when I got into my business life, because I was afraid to ask questions, and I would dive into projects without getting the information that I needed. And the project would never come out good because I didn't get the full 360 understanding that I needed. And that's why I've been stressing on this whole call that 90% of it, guys, comes from understanding who you are and who you want to serve. And understanding everything about that is going to help you get the right products out there, get the right services out there. Because there's a lot of brands out there that have great ideas, and then they go and execute on those ideas, and nobody wants it because it's not what they need. It's not what they want. So,
wow, that's very true. Wow, and I want to ask this: Henry Kaminski Jr. 5 years from now, what do we expect?
Oh man. Everything to be very, very simplified in my life. It's going to be a simplified version of myself. I live a beautiful life. I really do. And I am truly blessed to have the people in my life, to have the things in my life, to experience everything in my life. And it's just going to be a very refined and simplified version of what I'm living right now. If you want specifics, it's probably going to be working with less people, making more money, but I'm going to spend much more time doing the things that I love and enjoy the most, and that's traveling with my family, raising my son, just enjoying those little moments, because I tell everybody this. Like, life is so short. Life is extremely short. And if we don't pay attention to being present and doing the things that we love to do today, it's going to be gone in 2 minutes.
I can totally relate to that. I would say that I'm all about living the world that we're living, and everybody that I meet in a way better state than when I first got them, when I first met them. I want my contribution to this earth to be very positive, and to have people that will say, this guy, his life contributed to my success or where I am today, and which is something that I said I can relate to what you just said. So I really can't wait to see all the great things that are going to be happening in your life. Next question, one question that I also wanted to ask you is line extension. Alris and Jake Trout, they talk about it as a trap. And many people, when they're running a very successful brand, they tend to then expand that brand, and then just try to use the same name and for everything. So what do you think about line extension? Do you think companies succeed when they line extend?
I think that when they line extend but they stay true to their values, and they stay aligned with their purpose, right? They're going to win. Okay, they will win. What happens is if they extend too far out, that's when they run into issues, and that's where things start to get really wobbly. So what I would do is I would make sure that if you're going to extend, make sure that you do it slowly so that you build those different channels and those different lines with strength first, with a solid foundation, and that it's aligned with the overall brand value and purpose of the overall business. And that would be my suggestion. That would be my response to that. My question for you, Tyrone, though, I'm going to spin this on you a little bit because I'm curious. I'm curious to hear from you, why you're doing what you're doing, and why you reached out to me in the first place. So it's a two-part question. One is what exactly, why are you doing what you're doing?
Okay. So I always like to begin with this story. I fell in love with branding firstly because in Africa it's something which was not something that everybody knew about. It was just something, you start a business, you just put a funny name and you just go out there, and people didn't really understand this. The reason why I do what I do is I like to connect people between who they are and what they do. So taking a person, helping them and assisting them to connect who they are and what they do, so that they can have global impact, not just local champions. So I'm all about then developing those people to have global impact, not just local impact. They say go big or go home. I say go big and go global. Which is and go global, and which is something that I've seen in my personal life. I asked you a question about people that I'm global, number one. When I talk about stuff that I'm doing, it's not just talking. I've got the results to prove for it. I've got things to do, stuff to show for it, and to show that this is what I really stand for. This is what I'm doing. This is what I've done. And why I do what I do is I'm all about impacting, inspiring, and transforming lives. This is what I want to impact lives. I want to inspire people. I want to see transformation in people's lives. As I say that I'm all about seeing, living. You can go ahead.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Well, it's how do I put it? it's just something that I was just very passionate about. It's just something that I was very passionate about from an early stage. I think from about 5 years ago,
So what
and I
happened
just
5 years
started
ago?
5 years ago, or 4 years ago. My father passed on, and things changed. And I call it like when you look at your life from stairs, from the top of the stairs, and you get to evaluate a lot of things and a lot of things about your life, and you say, okay, this is me, this is what I want to be about, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, this is who I want to become. And I just started. How I started at the time, I was like, okay, I want to impact. At the time, it was just young people, because we didn't have a lot of young people who were doing great things. I had to break a lot of things that people were telling that, okay, you need to go to school, then you need to get a degree, work for 40 years, then when you start a business, then you write a book. And I had to break all those things and say, okay, I'm gonna write a book when I'm 18, so that I'll launch the book. And I did that. I launched the book, and which became very successful. And I said, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that. And all my life is all about doing things so that other people can see that, okay, if he did it, then it's possible. If he did it, then it's gonna be very possible. So I'm that person that people look at and say, okay, he has done this, or he did that. So it's very possible, and there's no limit. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. How old are you, my friend?
Well, you know what? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna text you my age. Note.
You're funny.
Yeah.
Listen, you're very impressive. You're very impressive.
Yeah.
And I wanna congratulate you to actually getting really focused in what it is that you want to do while you're here on this world and in this lifetime. Because there's a lot of people that just wander their lives like zombies, like this, and they get up every day, and they don't know if they're coming or going, and it's a shame because there's people think that this is the life that they were handed, so they have to just live with it, where that is not my frame of mind and not my belief at all. I believe that you have the power to design the life of your dreams. It's just a matter of you finding the right reasons behind it to actually do it. And
it's true.
And so it's sad, and my heart goes out to you that it took the passing of your father for you to sort of stand up, brush your shoulders off, get tight, and say, this is what I'm going to set out to do for the rest of my life. And it's typical. And the reason why I asked that is because typically there was one or two defining moments in people's lives that get them to get that fired up to create their brands. And that is the drive, that is the force behind it all. And like you said, it's getting down to that and really digging that out and exploring that, which will define everything else that you do. It will.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
No, sometimes you just have to go there. Like,
Hey,
when I'm on my discovery calls with my clients, like, sometimes it's half a, it's digging deep into psychology. Why would somebody want this product or service? Why did you create this brand in the first place? Why do you want a new website? Why do you think it's time for a new logo? Those questions really unveil the true meaning to why they're doing it, right? And so you got to go there. And I know it's scary because nobody wants to go where it's sort of uncharted territory, where they think they got this, but they have no clue. You know, I'll give you a quick example. And I'm going to talk about this today in one of my other lives. So I realized that I have a fear of it's fear / sadness when it comes to parting with people. I don't like to leave, and I don't like people when they leave, right? And so it was bothering me because I would be so motivated, so enthusiastic, so fired up, like 95% of the whole experience working with people or friends or clients or whatever, right? And then once I realized that it was about to end, I would sort of like retreat. I would like disappear, right? Yeah. And so I asked myself, why am I so afraid of that? Right? Yeah. And what I realized was it's that feeling of loneliness, and I don't like to be lonely. I like when people are around me. I like when I'm interacting with people. That's when I'm most alive. And so I understood that was the reason. The other thing is I wasn't accepting that that's just what life is about. You know, what gets built will eventually be destroyed. It's just life. I mean, we're not all immortal, right? And so looking at that and understanding that and accepting that and choosing to look at it in a more positive light. For example, now that I've worked with this client, I've impacted them in a way that they've never been impacted before. I was able to create something for them that they weren't able to do on their own. The experience I had with them was so positive because I learned so much from them, right, as a unique human being, that I can take that experience and now impact new clients with that or other clients with that. And so I shouldn't be focusing in on the departure, but focusing in on the positive future that person's now going to have with their brand and the other people that I'm going to be able to impact due to that specific experience. And so now I'm able to, so the result of understanding this is when you start a project with 1,000% enthusiasm, I am now able to complete the project with the 1,000% enthusiasm that I started with.
Wow.
That's powerful. And that's a lot of deep digging that people don't want to go near. They don't want to touch it because they're afraid of it.
Wow. Can you talk briefly about your book?
Sure. So the name of the book, it's an Amazon bestseller, and it's called Refuse to Give Up. And the subtitle is Designing the Life of Your Dreams, defeating the limiting beliefs and designing the life of your dreams. And the book has it's an autobiography, if you will. It's basically the stepping stones of my personal life and my business career, and how it all got started, how it almost went bankrupt, and how I brought it back to life. And there's a lot of power inside the book. It talks about how, one of the chapters is everything that's glitter isn't gold. And and a lot of the fancy and the flashy things that I saw in my life growing up that I thought I wanted, as I matured and got more educated, right, I realized that it's like that fancy stuff isn't always what you think it is. And I always went for the fancy stuff and thinking that was going to make me happy. And I always was out there trying to impress people when I really should have been trying to impress myself each day by making myself better each day, which would then ultimately affect the people that communicated with me and were around me. It was all about like that, like, and it was a tough way to live, because if somebody didn't like me anymore, well, I rearranged my whole value system around that. Like, it was like I needed to make sure that I was accepted, you know, with those people, to make myself feel better. And that was a really tough way to live, you know.
Wow.
I did a lot of things in my early 20s that pissed a lot of people off in my family, my friends. I was very materialistic, you know. I thought I knew it all, you know. I let the money get to me, you know, because growing up, you know, I didn't have a lot of money. I wasn't one of those, I wasn't poor by any means, but we didn't have a lot of money. And when I finally got the money and was able to go on vacation, and it really got to me. You know, I really thought my shit didn't stink, you know, for lack of better words. And that destroyed a lot of personal relationships. And so basically the moral of the book is, when things get tough, you have to refuse to give up, because things will be tough throughout your life. Your life is not going to be this smooth ride. And the way you learn is through those mistakes and those lessons that those mistakes teach you. And I don't regret anything that I've done in the past. It was all stepping stones. It was all learning lessons that will make my life in the future better. Not that I'm not going to make mistakes in the future, I will. But it's taking those mistakes, learning from them, and designing a better future, which led to, you know, the success of the book, the success of my business, the success of now my personal life, and getting that fulfillment that I was looking for a long time. And I thought the money was gonna fulfill me, but it's not. It's the impact I'm leaving on people's lives. That's the true meaning behind Unique Designs and Henry Kaminski.
Wow. And I can totally relate to everything you just said, because I also went through the same phases that you're talking about. And I can relate to everything. It feels like you're talking about me. I actually need to get your book. In fact, I'll do it today because I really need it. Wow. And, you know, I think one of the things that really drew me to you was just your authenticity, you know, in your brand, in everything, and the cleanliness as well. You know, today I was thinking to myself when you started, I'm like, oh, I feel underdressed, because he's all looking very fashionable. He's all looking very prepared and stuff like that. And the authenticity and the cleanliness of your brand, you know, if you were to give me one word that better describes your word, which word would that be?
My what word?
One word that better describes your brand.
Oh, my brand.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's sort of like it's sort of like a two-word punch, but the word that comes to mind is impact and enhance, right? But it's simplicity as well. I think when we, and that I think is what you're talking to when you say cleanliness. And because, you know, the world is evolving at such a rapid pace. We're getting bombarded with thousands of messages a day, a minute, if you will, right? And what we need is more simplicity in our life, thinking about the foundational things. You know, our grandparents roamed this earth at one point, and they didn't have 1/10 of what we have and what we live with, right? And so I start to think about, you know, what would my grandmother or what would my grandfather say about this move, about this action, right? And so simplifying things down makes people feel safe. It builds confidence. It allows people to digest your messaging in an easy way. I posted this on my Instagram last night. That was very, very, I got a great response from it. And it looks like this. Right? And basically the boss is in the cart while everybody else is doing the work. And the leader is out in front of the cart. There's nobody in the cart. He's with the other employees or the other teammates, right? And he's pulling away with the rest of them. And the simplicity of the boss versus the leader illustration really resonated with a lot of people. And that tells me that people are starving for two things. The truth.
Truth, yes.
And simplicity.
Wow. No, I've learned a lot today. Honestly, this was valuable. People would pay millions for such information, but you've given this freely to everybody, myself and everybody who is watching, and I really, really appreciate that. And thank you very much for agreeing to do this. Thank you. Hopefully you come to Cape Town soon. Yeah, I'll have to make plans with you so that you come to Cape Town. And yeah, thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for reaching out. It was a pleasure.